Okay, today's lab is the sheet metal drive bay, which is basically out of a PC. So like if you had a tower PC, this would hold all your hard drives, and also your DVD drives and everything else would go in something like this in your tower PC. Okay, we actually have the example of that in the lab. It's basically, we're going to draw it and bend it as we go, and then we'll flatten it out and put it on a print. And when you get it all done, your print should look like this one, of course, with all the dimensioning and so forth. So it goes pretty good as long as you're careful. I'll try to point out any things to watch out for as we go. We'll probably pop back and forth on these. The instructions pretty much walk you through doing it. There are a couple little tricks to it. First one is you can't just pick part. I'm not going to start a project because there's only one part we're doing, but you don't just pick part. You got to pick a special part. So that's when people make the biggest mistakes. So you go to new, and there's one actually called sheet metal right there. Okay, and make sure you're in the English US, which you usually are by default. But if you get in millimeters, then you're evidently in metric, and that's with all of them for that matter. So you pick sheet metal and create. The next thing you're going to want to do is you got to create a new style. Okay, so we got to tell it it's a 1/16 of an inch thick aluminum 6061. All right, whenever you're dealing with sheet metal, you always got to set the style first, or you're getting like 1/8 of an inch steel by default or something like that. It's actually called generic. I don't even know if it's steel. So styles over here under setup, sheet metal defaults. Okay, so pick on that button. This should sound a little familiar. We did the same thing with the skateboard a while back. The actual board, we bent a piece of wood instead of metal, but it works kind of the same way. So we're going to hit the little pencil and make our own new style. Okay, so pick pencil there. All right, and then pick new and give it a name. And you could change the generic, but it's better to give it a name, of course. And I usually just call it the material and then the thickness. You could do it vice versa. So if you work somewhere, you'd have a bunch of these all set up, and you could go by thickness and then material, or material and then thickness, whatever. So I'm gonna do aluminum 1/16, and then just hit OK. And that's just a name. It doesn't, just trying to make it a halfway smart name, so when it sorts, it actually sorts and you can find it quickly. Okay, thickness is wrong, so we switch thickness over to 1/16 or 0.0625. The material's wrong. It says generic. We need to switch that over to the very first aluminum 6061. Okay, I don't think are we changing anything else. I think that's it. You can change the way it bends and things like that in there too, but I usually stick with the defaults for the most part. You get all that done, you hit save and close. Okay, and then you gotta switch it because it's still on the default, so you gotta switch it to the new one you made under the sheet metal rule. Okay, and then you hit OK. Okay, so next thing we want to use the face feature and extrude part 6 3/4 by 8 1/4. Okay, so first thing you need to do is you need to draw that. So you go to 2D sketch, XY plane, kind of like we normally do, and we're just going to draw the bottom. So this is the bottom of that PC drive bay that we're going to bend things up from. Okay, so I'd pick the drop down, go to, I usually do the 2-point rectangle or 2-point center again, and make sure your green dot on the origin there, and then type in, boy, I don't know which one it is the right direction here. Let's just look. I want to make sure I draw it as it's shown here. Be a lot easier to do it the same way as that is shown. Okay, so if I draw it like this face right here on my drawing that we're going to dimension out, because that's the base view. This one will come off it, this one will come off it, and the 3D will come off it. So I'm going to draw it like this one. So it's 8 1/4 wide and 6 3/4 tall. Okay, now I hopped out of there, so I'm going to hit escape and get back. So 2-point rectangle. Okay, so 8.25 wide tab, and then 6.75 tall. Okay, now that should, if you did it backwards, you just have to rotate it when you did your drawing, but I'm trying to avoid that, right? When you get that done, that's the end of the sketch. Pretty easy first sketch. You could actually put that hole in it, I guess, if you wanted to, but I do all the holes later. It seems like it's easier. Finish 2D sketch. And then you go to face. So face is going to turn it into metal, and there's only one sketch, so it's going to figure out which one, and it's going the right direction, so just hit OK. Make sure I didn't say anything crazy here. It's face teacher to create that. Okay, so we did that. First sentence is done. All right, now it gets a little tricky, but still not too bad. So we want to use the flange tool and put a 3/8 flange down, and then on the edge of that a 13/16 flange out. So what we're doing now is we're making this 3/8 flange down, okay, and then we're making the 13/16 flange out. Okay, so we're doing those on both sides. So when you go down, you want to make sure you pick on the bottom right here when we do the flange here. I mean, they have a bend tool, but the bend isn't actually bending. Bend tool actually jumps across something and bends, basically creates a bend. So we don't use that. We're going to use flange to make a bend, basically. Okay, so this bottom one is one you want to pick on. So we pick flange. Okay, and then this one is kind of like a fillet. You can just do a bunch in a row at different sizes and everything else. So the first thing you want to do is change your size. Okay, so we change our size to, if I say something wrong, somebody straighten me out, but 3/8 and 13/16. So change our size to 3/8 or 3.375, whichever you want to do. Okay, and then we need to pick on the bottom, or we have to pick 0 selected, okay, up in the top left. And then we can pick on the bottom of that short edge, okay, the 6 3/4 side. And you can pick through the part on the opposite side. So see how I'm picking through the part, and again, I'm not spinning it. You can spin it too, but you don't have to. So I'm picking the bottom of the other side. So it shouldn't put down 2 3/8 flanges. Then you hit apply. Don't hit OK, just hit apply. And now switch the size over to 13/16, okay, and pick 0 selected. And now we want to pick on the front so it comes towards us. And then on the very far back one, so it goes away from us there. We don't want it going underneath there, so we got to make sure you pick on the correct face. Pick on the wrong face, it'll bend the other direction. Okay, then you pick apply, and you just leave the thing open, and we're going to keep on trucking here. The next thing we're supposed to do is, okay, when you do a flange, make sure you get the edge. We did all that. Towards the offset to the outside, yeah, we picked the right edge. Continue to flange unflanged sides 6 3/4 high and then 1 inch in. Okay, so now we're going to make these two side faces, okay, and there's 6 3/4 high and 1 inch in, so they're 6 3/4 tall and 1 inch in, okay. Okay, so 6 3/4 up from here, so we make it look like this, and it'll actually look a lot like it when we get done, and then 1 inch in, and then we'll cut some cutouts in it later. Okay, so we're still on flange, so here it's showed back up. Pick 0 selected. I guess I gotta change the size first, so 6.75. Okay, and then 0 selected, and make sure you pick the top edge, okay, because we want it going up of both these short sides. Okay, all right, then hit apply, and now we change it to 1 inch, and we bring it in on both sides. You can see it's starting to look like that 3D picture there. I have to hit 0 selected again, and pick the inside of both the ones you just brought up. Okay, and that bends it just like that. Okay, so now it's starting to look like something. And then hit apply. Okay. Okay, let's see what the directions say now. I think there's some goofy stuff going on next. Okay, add and cut the top edge. Okay, we got to change a rip here later. That's what I was thinking about. Okay, then cut. So we need a 7 wide, 1 1/4 tall cutout, and it's 1 3/8 down. Okay, 1 3/8 down, 7 by 1 1/4, and it is centered on both of these. Okay, and then we're gonna cut it all the way through. So just pick. It wouldn't really matter what face you're in. So at this point, we need to basically close or cancel out of the flange. We're done flanging for a little bit, and we're going to put this cutout in it right here. Okay, and it's 1 3/8 down. It's 1 1/4 tall, and it's 7 inches wide. Okay, so we're going to draw that right on there. Okay, I mean, those dimensions are in there too, but I tried to put them in here to make it a little bit easier for you. So right here on the top, you just right click on there, new sketch, and it's just like drawing on anything else in Inventor. Okay, and then we go to, it really doesn't matter what kind of rectangle you use, but I'd probably use a 2-point, standard 2-point on this one. You just somewhere on that face, draw it, and we'll dimension it after the location after we draw it. So it was 7 tall since mine spun, and then tab and 1.25 wide. Okay. And then after you get that done, let's center that thing up. So we want to constrain it. We're going to use a constraint, and it's probably vertical since my Y is going the other way, but who knows? We'll see when we do it. It might be vertical, but I'm going to pick the vertical one. Yeah, it is vertical on mine at least. Find the midpoint of that box I just drew, and then find the midpoint of this face or side. And then now it's all centered real nice, okay? Now all we need is 1 3/8 down from the very top. So throw a dimension on there from the very top to the beginning of your rectangle until it is 1 3/8 or 1.375. Okay. Alright, and then it should be fully constrained and everything's blue like that. Alright. Now you could extrude cut this through. That actually would work, but you'd have to go back into 3D model to do that. So let's finish the sketch. And then we want to use the cut tool. And there's only one there. And the only thing you really need to change there is tell it to go all the way through. And it won't, the preview will be wrong. So don't worry about that. Just do it. And then hit OK, and it'll show it all the way through. Okay, so we use a cut tool to do that, which is basically like extrude cut. Okay, so these holes have a flange coming in on them. See right here, they're also 1 inch in, and there's a couple holes we'll put in that later. But we have to do something a little bit different there. We have to make sure the relief top width cut is 1/8 of an inch. Okay, what all that means is when it bends this in, bends this piece here in. Imagine this metal is actually there, and a punch is hitting it and bending it in. It's going to actually chunk out a piece of metal so that it's a cleaner bend. So we hit flange again, just like we did before, and we got to go over to the bend tab. Okay, so pick flange and then pick the bend tab, and then this little A dimension, see that's where the cut is. Okay, when it's going to bend it, that can be basically 0 where it rips it all the way to something, and you can set it up in your sheet metal defaults too in this style, but a lot of times you just change it as you go. So this is A. That's A. Bend relief width. I can't say that 5 times fast. Okay, so that needs to be 0.125 or 1/8. Either way is right. Then go back over to your shape. We're on 1, I guess, still from last time. Pick 0 selected, and you want to pick the inside bottom of both of them, so it goes in like that. Inside bottom. So you get 2 of them there, okay? And if you notice, you can't see it yet, but if you hit apply, it cut out 1/8 of an inch. Right there, okay? And that's what we're trying to get. Okay. I think that's it for the flanges. Yeah, now you just do a bunch of cutouts. Okay, so there's nothing else too fancy on this thing. You draw circles and hit cut. Draw slots. This slot over here, I would you can try to do it inside your sketch, but it might be safer to do it as a feature. But either way, you draw one and mirror it over here, and then mirror these 2 over to there, okay? So you get all 4 of them. When you're doing these cutouts in the top, these ones in the bottom bends are easy. They're just holes. But when you're doing and then this one's just a rectangle, so it's pretty easy too. These, just make sure you got a continuous loop to cut. So you can't just draw this little pattern here. You actually have to draw back and back over it when you're cutting that out. So you'll draw that like up here, okay? When you draw that in this face, and the same thing on this bottom one, it has to be continuous. You can't just draw an L here. You've got to draw a box to get rid of it. It's just got to be a continuous loop. So make sure when you're drawing in there, it's pretty simple, but you can do 2 rectangles, or you can just do a line, whatever you want. And you can just throw it in there and throw dimensions on later if you want. So it looks like it is something like that, right? And when you go all the way over here to this face, make sure you get on the right face. Where the heck's it even at? What you can do is hit F7 so you can actually see it. So F7 should bring you down. I just did it, but it didn't happen. I did the wrong face. No wonder it's not working. Okay, I'm backing out of here. Sorry. Okay, so the sketch was supposed to be on... No, that's right. I was doing it right, I'm sorry. Getting confused here. Yeah, so the holes are in the ones below. So if you want to see those holes as you cut them out, you hit F7 and it'll bring you down to that level. This one is on top, so you can do it. So you should be able to see it. So however you want to draw that, there's a lot of ways to draw it, but I'd probably go to 3D so I can. My problem was I couldn't see where the end of that was very well. So what does it look like? So something like that, all right. And then throw dimensions on it, tell it that this is horizontal and everything else, and then cut it out. But my main point was make sure it's a continuous loop all the way around or not an open one, or it won't cut it. Okay. Make sure those are the right dimensions and it's fully constrained, of course. Okay, a couple last things before I let you guys go. So when you're making this drawing, most of this stuff is pretty standard. Of course, this is just a 3D. I probably pulled it up here and then drug it down here later after I made it. I'm not sure if I pulled it down here and put it up here, but your images need to be very similar to this one, and they can be slightly moved, but I want to see the ones like here. The details, you have to do details like this. They're not very fancy. Make sure when you're picking the detail, we've only done that a couple times, that you pick the correct view first. Otherwise, if you like pick this view and then you try to make a detail on here, it won't work because it can't. There's nothing on this view up here. So you got to be on the right view when you make your detail. Okay, flat pattern. You won't have access. Wait till you get all the way done. I'm gonna do it now. Don't do it now. But when you get all the way done drawing this thing, first you save it. Okay, make sure you save it because once in a while it'll crash if you made mistakes along the line. So you save it and then you go to create flat pattern. Okay, you want to do this before you create your drawing, or you won't have an option to put the flat pattern in there. So, and don't do it till after you're all the way done punching all the holes and everything in it. Okay, so you create the flat pattern, and you can't save it while you're in the flat pattern. You have to go back to the folded part, okay, and then you can save it. And then when you put that into a drawing, you'll have an option in there to draw. When you pick the base view or whatever, you have an option to put a flat pattern in a regular view. You'll see it's right up front. I'll show you real quick, I guess. Let's go to new drawing here real quick. Okay, use your template when you bring yours in. Okay, and make sure you change the sheet to the correct size, of course. But basically go to base here, and since I didn't save the thing, but see, that's what's getting mad at me because I didn't save it earlier. There's your flat pattern you can switch to, or your regular folded part, so you get the option, but you won't get that unless you create the flat pattern. Okay, the rest of it's pretty easy stuff. Make sure you use the dimensioning. Make sure your drawing looks just like the example. Okay, I think everything's in there.